Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Sherwood. I'm from Sector. Thank you for joining us this morning for today's presentation on Yubico and Passwordless with Microsoft. Sector's been working with Yubico for just over 12 months now. It's been an interesting journey. The technology and the market is evolving, and that's evident by Microsoft recently announcing at their Insights conference that they are actually going passwordless. So this morning's session has been organised to bring in the Yubico guys to talk about what that opportunity for the channel looks like. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Geoff Schomburgk, who is the Yubico channel manager for Australia. Geoff will obviously introduce Yubico, the two-factor authentication solution that is the YubiKey, and what the opportunity looks like for the Australian channel partners. Geoff?
Okay, thanks, Matt. And as you can see here, we've also got my colleague, Alex Wilson, also from Yubico. Alex, do you quickly want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, just welcome to the session, guys. I look after the technology aspect across Australia and New Zealand and broader within APG.
Thank you. So we've got a presentation that we'll run through here. The session should take 45 minutes, I think, and we'll have some time for questions at the end. So we're very much looking forward to your engagement. Just using the tool, you'll see on the right-hand side a question mark. That's where you can sort of click on that and post some questions. We'll try and take most of those towards the end of the session, if that's okay. But if they crop up during the session, no problem at all. So we've got a bit of a demo as well. So we'll jump into it, I think, if that's okay, Matt. Let's go. So as Matt said, we've been working with Sector for over a year. The relationship's going really well, and we're really pleased to be able to present to the Sector partners today. And it's really about the Microsoft Passwordless announcement and what does it mean? What are the opportunities that can bring to your customers to grow your business? And what we'll do today is sort of demystify that a bit. The agenda I'd like to cover is passwordless. In this space has been a vision that's been talked about for quite some time. So what is that vision? The vision versus reality. So what is the Microsoft announcement? What does it really mean? And then when it comes to passwordless authentication, there are many options that you'll see, that you'll hear about in the industry. And then, why does a Yubico security key, the YubiKey, fit in with that, and where does it actually fit? We can then talk about that user experience, talk about some customer references and use cases, and do a brief demonstration so you get to see what passwordless is like. And then finally, some tips on how to engage with your customers and some topics and some questions that you might want to use in that sort of qualification stage to hopefully engage and grow your business. So with that, let's jump into it. And I'll start this with a short video, which is around the comparison with passwords and passwordless. And let me jump to that. And this goes for about a minute, so hopefully give you an insight as to what the problem is that the industry is trying to solve. Okay, so hopefully that was a bit of an insight and a bit of tongue-in-cheek as well. But I think that experience is common to many. The complexity of passwords and what the YubiKey offers in this passwordless world is that strong authentication with that ease of use. And so hopefully that gives a bit of context. So let's jump into it. And the vision for passwordless, and this is dating back a couple of years now from Gartner, that they said back in 2 years ago, by 2022, that's next year, that Gartner predicts 60% of large global enterprises and 90% of mid-size enterprises will implement passwordless methods in more than 50% of use cases. So you can see that the target is that mid-size enterprise and large global corporates implementing passwordless across more than half of the use cases. Okay, that gives us hope that there's really a burning need here. What is it? Let's define it. So passwordless authentication is any form of multi-factor, as in two-factor or multi-factor authentication, that does not require the user to provide a password at login. Pretty simple. And then Microsoft, how do they talk about this? So when they define it, it is a form of multi-factor authentication that replaces the password with a secure alternative. So when Microsoft refer to this, they're generally talking about the WebAuthn or FIDO2 standards when they're talking about passwordless. So the ability to not need a password, log in to your systems and do it in a very, very secure manner. That's really what we're talking about. So just a quick poll, if you like, and this will get us started and hopefully engaged. So if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's polls there, and you should be able to just click your answer there. Now, have you discussed passwordless with your customers already? Simple yes or no. So I'll leave you to do that, and we'll jump on with the presentation. So I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of yeses in that short poll question there. So general availability of Microsoft's passwordless has been announced, and what is the myth versus the reality? So let's have a look at that. So as Matt said at the start, at the Microsoft Ignite event, which this year was a virtual event, unfortunately, but it was announced that passwordless would go GA, generally available. And what the announcement meant was that Microsoft was officially moving from the preview mode to full production or generally available to enable passwordless authentication with Microsoft's Azure Active Directory. That's what was announced. For those who are not familiar, what is Azure Active Directory from Microsoft, or referred to as Azure AD? It is their cloud-based identity and access management solution. So Azure Active Directory basically offers all features of Microsoft's Active Directory solution, but in the cloud. So it's a cloud-based platform that we're talking about, that this has been enabled upon. And there are, in Microsoft's world and the world that we live in as well, there are a number of passwordless approaches, that is not requiring the user to enter a password at login. And here's some examples. So, emailing you a magic link. So, hey, let me in. The system will send you an email. You click on that and you're in. You don't need to enter a password for that. So that technically qualifies as passwordless. Many of the identity and access management solutions include passwordless solutions as well. Smart card, if you're operating in an Active Directory on-premises environment, or other solutions using smart card, that is also passwordless. But as we said earlier, the WebAuthn and FIDO2 standard is indeed passwordless, and that's really where Microsoft's announcement fits. We support a range of passwordless solutions at Yubico, but the focus of today's session is this WebAuthn FIDO2 standard of passwordless authentication. So when we're looking at the myth and the reality, what was the original vision? Many years back when this was first talked about, on the left-hand side here, you can see the passwordless vision was enabled across all platforms, legacy and modern platforms. The ability to access this passwordless login feature across the desktop and a mobile device. And users never having to type in anything at all to log in. And as you'll see on the right-hand side, we still need to use a PIN to log in. And it was intended to be the most secure form of authentication that was available. In terms of the reality and what was released on the 2nd of March as that generally available feature, you can see on the right-hand side here. And what I'd like to do is hand over to my colleague, Alex Wilson, who can sort of talk us through some of the detail of that and take us from there. Alex.
Thanks, Geoff. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So the reality, and this has been developing over the past number of years now, since Microsoft initially went private preview, public preview, and they have been releasing WebAuthn FIDO2 support into Windows 10 over a number of years, and each iteration brings out a new feature. But basically, there was a version 1903 that came out that starts to support that product, so it has been around for some time, and it's been in the market for some time. Azure Active Directory joined devices. As we go through this presentation, there is a sweet spot for when we think of talking to customers about this, and obviously customers who are all in with Azure Active Directory and have their Windows 10 clients joined to that domain, then this capability is a reality today. However, there are scenarios where it's not fully supported yet across BYOD devices and Mac. So Windows 10 as a client, the traditional Control-Alt-Delete login, yes, that works. Authenticating through the browser on its own, yes, that works as well. There is no mobile support as yet, given that Microsoft don't control mobile devices. They may have management tools, but basically iOS and Android are marching to their own beat, and they are bringing WebAuthn and FIDO2 capability along in their own speed. The user experience, yes, you need to enter a PIN or a biometric, and that can be supported by the Windows client itself. So a laptop today may have a fingerprint reader, or you may wish to use the camera. Previously, we've talked about user experiences where you can just tap and go. So I just bring a security key up to an NFC reader, I tap, and I'm authenticated. The FIDO protocol in WebAuthn fully supports that user experience, but what Microsoft have implemented and support today does require what's called user verification, and that means either a PIN or a biometric. Next slide. So where does the YubiKey fit in? Geoff, shall I continue with this?
I'm more than happy for you to do so, Alex. Keep going, mate.
All right, I'll keep going with this. So Microsoft showcases their password solutions across multiple products. Windows Hello for Business, the Microsoft Authenticator, security keys, which are FIDO2 enabled, and obviously through the browser. And thankfully, Edge has moved to the Chrome platform, so that means generally everything gets supported much better now. All of these components support a passwordless solution. Authenticators, whether platform-based or whether physically based or whether on a mobile phone, all can give a user experience that's required. Now, YubiKeys fit into this environment very well. Obviously, we are a physical token, but a YubiKey on its own can support two of these methods. The Microsoft Authenticator uses a protocol called TOTP, time-based one-time password, just the same as Google Authenticator, and we have the Yubico Authenticator, which supports that protocol. Similarly, there is FIDO security keys, and obviously that is where we play. Now, not all users would want to use a physical token, but there are many scenarios where portability of authentication comes into play, where mobile restricted environments and general high security levels are required. When they're required, having a physical security key solves that problem, and allows you to get to a maturity that we can talk about within the Essential 8. So the options for Microsoft Azure Active Directory and the business scenario and the user experience. If we think of Windows Hello as a platform, obviously this is office workers, Windows Hello for Business. It is FIDO2 certified, and it leverages a TPM chip or a trusted platform module. This is Microsoft's prime authentication experience, and you are using a PIN or a biometric. The authenticator definitely ties it within the Microsoft world to the mobile phone. And that is a traditional use case for people with mobile phones. However, if it's a BYO device, sometimes the user says, no, we need to use this on a corporate device, but you do use a mobile phone. With FIDO security keys, the authentication is a portable authenticator, can be used across shared workstations, first-line workers, and mobile restricted users. Can also be the backup credential if you have the Microsoft Authenticator, you have generally one mobile, one credential. If you were to lose that or were unable to get access to it, the security key or the YubiKey can be that backup capability. And that provides what we feel is the simplest experience. There's no batteries within a YubiKey. It's on your keychain, and it's available to be used wherever you go, depending on how you work within your organization.
It's probably worth just commenting here, Alex, as well. You mentioned shared workstations and mobile restricted environments. In a lot of cases, with the BYOD, bring your own device, there's been a bit of user resistance that we've had in discussions with customers that hey, this is my mobile device, I don't want any corporate software on that. So this is where the security key becomes an even better option. So it's, we've had some unionized workforces saying, well, you'll either give me a mobile phone or you'll give me a security key. And the business-wise, we know the security keys are a much cheaper option there. So whilst the Microsoft Authenticator, the software-based solution is readily available, sometimes you can get that user resistance to implementing it across a wider workforce. Okay, let's jump into another question. So there are many different modes of authentication. And if you look across on the right-hand side, we've got our poll question number 2. What is your preferred mode of authentication? So there are a range that we've just talked about, and just curious as to know, not exactly which one, but why? What is your preferred mode of authentication? Is it whatever's the easiest to use? Is it the one that gives you the most comfort, that it's the most secure to be used? Or is it indeed whatever's just cheapest? So there's some of the types of comments that come up when we talk to customers as well. So I'm interested in your feedback there, and if you'd like to sort of click the your answer there on poll number 2, that'd be helpful, and just to sort of see where they go, because if you've heard us speak before, you'll know that Yubico and YubiKeys the promise is the ease of use and that convenience factor with the highest level of security. But often it's not just a case of that. Sometimes the economics do get into the mix and have to be considered. So really keen to know what your thoughts are there. So poll number 2 on the right-hand side will help us go from there. Okay, Alex, you want to keep going, or do you want me to take that one?
No, I'll take this one.
Okay.
So when we think of the passwordless journey, and then also how can we get some runs on the board today? We have already had some success, and Geoff will talk about that in a moment. But this slide is a little bit concerning because everybody looks to the right and follows the arrow. However, the sweet spot and the most accepting of customers are those that are using Office 365 today, and that is their prime and their major application. So any enterprise or mid-sized businesses who have Office 365 through and through, they're utilizing cloud services. They don't have a overly complex environment. They may have single sign-on running through their environment, which is always good. But that is a sweet spot for passwordless as a conversation, and then hopefully YubiKey as an additional conversation. Anyone utilizing Azure Active Directory, obviously they are equally a good customer of ours and have adopted the cloud technologies, and they may have additional applications underpinning that in addition to Office 365. As we go further to the right, there is increased deployment complexity, and we have to start considering what is on-prem, what is in the cloud, how are we synchronizing things. And so when we're having initial conversations with customers, yes, we can do hybrid passwordless authentication using security keys, but additional Microsoft products come into play. We need to consider different privileged access and roles within different within the cloud and with on-prem, where are users created, and it starts to get a bit more complex. And so you end up in the weeds before you've sold them a solution. Whereas standard Office 365 users or anyone with Azure Active Directory, it's very easy to switch on this capability. There is some basic learning around how to use passwordless authentication, because people get concerned with, I actually like using a password because I use it everywhere I go. That is one of the security problems. So when we start to remove the surface where users are entering passwords, we need to understand that, and how does that affect a user, and will there be resistance to moving to an easier, because basically the customer or the user themselves probably don't care that it's better security, but we need to convince them that this is easier and it will reduce cost. Now, we reduce cost by reducing support incidents because it is easier. There is less activity or administrative activity once it's set up to continue this passwordless environment. And obviously, the user never ever has to reset the password, so they will never ever forget the password. They could forget their PIN. However, you should ask them, when was the last time you forgot your credit card PIN? And then they start to realize what a PIN is, which is an individual's something they know that is part of them and something they want to use. Okay, Geoff, continue.
Okay, so what is passwordless? What is this user experience that Alex is talking about? We've got a short video here, and I'm apologizing in advance because it's quite underwhelming, because it is so simple. But let me just run this and see what it looks like, the user experience for passwordless. Guys, I'm not sure how that was looking. That didn't look so great when it played, did it?
Just try again, Geoff.
Let me start that again.
That was better.
All right, that went a bit better, didn't it?
It did.
So yeah, as you saw then, the experience was pretty straightforward. It was insert your key. The system recognized that. You put in your PIN, you touch the key, and again that touches that user presence to verify that there's a human there, and away you go. And the longest part of the authentication was actually registering and validating. So so that's it. That's what the experience is. No passwordless. Insert your YubiKey into your PIN and touch to validate that you are physically there as a human being, and on you go. But you know, as we said, there's some legacy systems out there, and sometimes legacy systems can get in the way of doing what you think is a really good idea. And one of the key features of the YubiKey, particularly the YubiKey 5 series, is that it is a multi-protocol, multi-service key. So it can really be the bridge from where you are today to that passwordless future. And Alex, you might want to give some thoughts on that a bit further detail.
Yeah, traditionally adoption, most customers start with the YubiKey for securing their privileged access, and then start to move it out into the user workforce. The reason they do this is that the key is supported in many, many different applications and systems that you log into. As Geoff said, multi-service, multi-protocol product can be used across multiple systems at the same time through different interfaces and different use cases. And this is generally why the YubiKey is deployed widely once an organization starts to use it.
Indeed, and that's important that you can start with those protocols that you might be more common today, the TOTP or the smart card protocols, and then move towards the FIDO2 experience, all on the same key. So the YubiKey supports that. There's no need to retrofit or upgrade. That's one of the reasons why we see it very much as excuse me, as that bridge to passwordless. And so what does Yubico have? Sorry for the paid advertisement here, but the YubiKey 5 series, as we said, is the multi-protocol, multi-service key on the left-hand side, supporting all of those different protocols. You can see we have a range of different form factors. So we have from left to right the YubiKey 5 NFC. So the little Wi-Fi type symbol indicates that it's got the NFC capability with a USB-A port. The 5C NFC, so the USB-C and the NFC capability. They're probably the two most common and most popular keys, keychain versions, as you can see. The one in the middle is the Lightning and USB-C, so that's supports iOS devices that do not have the NFC touch touch capability. That's just the USB-C, and then we have two nano devices for installation, particularly in laptops, to be left in on a more permanent basis at USB-A and USB-C. But all of them different form factors, but all support the same number of protocols. On the right-hand side, we have the blue key, the security key with NFC capability. That supports the FIDO protocols only. So it's more of a prosumer device supporting U2F and FIDO2 and WebAuthn. Then in the middle, we have the YubiKey Bio. So that's a question we get asked a lot. And Alex has mentioned some of the Microsoft authentication use the touch or the biometric. So the YubiKey Bio is very soon to be released, and it has that the bigger disk, as you can see there in the middle, and that is a fingerprint biometric. So in USB-A or USB-C form factors, but like the blue security key, it is only the FIDO protocols, U2F, FIDO2, and of course WebAuthn. So that is due for release later this year, and we're in the user preview stage of that at the moment. So if you've got customers that are interested in the biometric versus the touch, get in touch with us, let us know, and we can give you some more information on that, or follow the YubiKey biometric BioKey blog on our website. So a range of different keys to suit a range of different applications. And one of the other questions we get asked a lot is, what happens if I lose my key? Well, our recommendation of best practice from what we see here and in other parts of the world is, as you do with your house key, you have a backup somewhere. As you do with your car key, you have a backup somewhere as well. And we would also recommend that you have different form factors of YubiKeys to give you that security and peace of mind. But many of the applications, such as Microsoft and Azure AD, also have alternate methods as well. So you can choose to use your YubiKey as your primary authentication method, and then maybe a text message or an SMS as a less secure, but as a backup. So various options to consider there. Moving forward, what are the customer stories? Who's doing this? Who's doing it well? What do we see? We've got some good case studies from other parts of the world, particularly the US at the moment. Obviously, you'd expect Microsoft to be very strong over there. But in our part of the world, what do? We have three customers that are embarking on this journey, and obviously being released only in March, there's not too many that are well advanced on this, but here's three that we've been working with locally in the Australian market context. So a little bit about them, and these are all partners of Sector and Yubico, so all relevant here. Mackay Regional Council in Queensland, they were the first ones actually to go with the Yubico's enterprise subscription model, where it pay as a per month per key, and they went in on the full Microsoft solution there. The Queensland Museum Network also was a trial customer of the passwordless solution and a reference case for YubiKey and Microsoft. So they started off with a relatively small deployment, as Alex said, starting with the admins and the privileged users. And then recently the Parliament of Victoria, so not the public service, but the Parliament House itself, was the first Yubico Microsoft customer to take up the Account Guard solution, which is something offered by Microsoft and to protecting free speech in Parliament and freelance journalism around the world. So the Parliament of Victoria was the first in the Australian market to jump on the Microsoft Account Guard program, and they've been rolling out passwordless YubiKeys at the moment and starting to roll that out across their organisation in the Parliament. They're interested more in that hybrid solution that Alex talked about, with a bit of on-prem and a bit of Azure in the cloud. But yeah, so there's a couple there just for reference, and said early days, but a lot of the discussions we're having with you, the partners, and with our customers as well is wanting to get deeper into this. But just a bit of comfort to know that you're not the first, that it is starting to happen. We do have some larger scale deployments in the US, so if you're starting to do this at scale, there's absolute confidence that it will be as successful as you want it to be. And I guess that's kind of why there was a bit of a delay in Microsoft releasing this. They just wanted to make sure that everything was right in the back end. But finally released, and yeah, we're starting to see some customer case studies coming on board, which is really encouraging. Okay, how do you get started? Seeing from the polls that you're starting to, there's a good representation, starting to talk about passwordless. So how do you take that to the next level of discussion with your customers? And this is really a qualification checklist that we've talked about. What does passwordless mean? What is it? It's authentication without entering a password. There are many options. So a question for your customer is, what does passwordless mean to you? Is it this FIDO2 WebAuthn experience? Is it smart card? Is it not something you've heard of? What's the driver behind a passwordless? Are you interested in deploying passwordless to improve the user experience, to make it easier for the user to log in, like that first video that we saw? Is it to increase the level of security, to protect and strengthen your security across your organization? Is it both? Is it something else? Is it the return on investment that Alex mentioned in reducing the workload on the IT support team in terms of password resets and account lockouts. So, explore that with your customers. What's the environment that you're considering using password for? And we've talked about those. Is it Office 365? Is it the Azure Active Directory in the cloud? Is it a hybrid environment? Is it on-prem only? So understanding the customer's Microsoft environment will help determine whether this is the best way forward. And what are you protecting? Are we looking to leverage passwordless at the workstation login? We're looking at the application login. Are there other solutions? Have you got an identity access management platform in place? Have you got a privileged access management solution in place? So understanding in a bit more detail, what are you trying to protect? What is the environment? As we said, there are mobile restricted environments that can be distribution centers, that can be trading desks and call centers. There can be shared workstation environments where you want that higher level of security, and we see that in some retail applications as well. From a endpoint, is it Windows? Is it Mac? Is it both? And then from the Microsoft Windows point of view, what version of Windows 10 have you got? If it's less than version 1903, you'll need to upgrade. Are you willing to upgrade? So a few questions there to prompt the discussion. A lot of the times we start with, from that business point of view, is what are you trying to protect? What's the user experience that you're looking at? And is this the right solution? So some suggestions there. And further resources. So we're coming pretty much to the end. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great. That'll allow some time for some questions. So if you've got any questions, drop them into the Q&A section over there on the right-hand side. But there are more resources available, and that's what today is really all about. It's to give a bit of a tease as to, yes, this is real. There are customers out there today that are using this, and there's more information available to you. So from Yubico's point of view, we've got some videos. We've shown a couple of those today. There's a bit more as a release from the Microsoft Ignite event. That was more of a 20-minute type video, but it goes into the details of not just how the user experience looks, but what do you have to do as an admin to set that up. So there's a bit more on the how-to guide in video format to enable that strong passwordless authentication. Obviously, the Works with YubiKey catalog on our website. If you just search for Microsoft, you'll see a lot of information there. And Microsoft's own website, they have the Azure AD passwordless sign-in guide. So that's a document format. So there's a couple of different formats with interesting information about how to set it up and get started. And of course, if you want to talk to us, Geoff and Alex, our details are there. And why did I leave your mobile phone off, Alex? Because I guess they wanted to call me, and you always answer your phone. That's not true. And then from our friends at Sektor, obviously, there's a network of Sektor sales guys around the country. But if you don't know your Sektor rep, just the sales at sektor.com.au. That's about 40 minutes or just under, and by the look of that says we're at the end. So I can end the slides there and throw that open to questions if anyone's got any. Matt, any other comments from you as we've gone through the discussion?
Yeah, obviously I've been working quite closely with yourselves, and the opportunity that is now presenting is quite unique. So I look at it and think, if we've got any channel partners that are either a MSP, managed service provider, or a Microsoft reseller or partner, it definitely is something that you should be having a conversation with your customers about. There's plenty of information that Sektor and Yubico can make available for you so you've got in your sales toolkit. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity for us to get out there and start working with the end customer on how they can best protect their IT assets.
Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to have a quick look at our poll, and the first question was, have you discussed passwordless with your customers? The response is 75% yes. So that's encouraging. That Matt, our channel partners are already having these discussions, so that's good. And And the second question, what is your preferred mode of authentication? Interestingly, 66, 2/3 are suggesting that whatever's easiest. So that user convenience is really what drives it. And that's what we've talked about through the session today. The whole reason that initial video, the complexity of losing passwords and getting confused and resets all the time. So ease of use is obviously the preferred mode of authentication, followed then by whatever is the most secure. Interestingly, the whatever's the cheapest didn't get much of a rating at all. So that's some interesting feedback. All right, we don't have any questions on the list here. I'm conscious that everyone's also pretty busy, so what we'll do is we'll close this out. You have our contact details. This will be available. This is being recorded, so we'll make this available later on if any of your colleagues or partners want to look in and dine in on this beautiful presentation. They're more than happy to do so. So Matt, unless you've got anything else, I'm happy from the Yubico point of view that we close it off for now. Thank you, Alex, for your contribution. Geoff and Alex available from Yubico if you've got any questions. Matty, over to you to close it out.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. On behalf of the sector and obviously our resellers who are able to join us today, I just want to personally thank Geoff and Alex for their presentation. A world of knowledge there, guys. So if you've got any questions in terms of YubiKeys or 2FA in particular, shout out to your sector representative, or as Geoff said, he's more than happy to take a call and talk you through the solution. So once again, guys, thank you very much, and we appreciate the presentation.
Super. Thanks everybody, and bye for now.
Thank you.